Welcome everyone. Welcome once again to another Sports Frenzy podcast. And tonight is a bit different. I have a major interview lined up with a man that is well thought of. I mean, a lot of people said that they have a lot of things to say about him, but I think he has been one of the best ever since he got that presidency. And I'm talking about none other than States Principal and also Issa President, Mr. Keith Wellington. Welcome, boss. Good night. How are you doing?
Hey, Levan, thanks for having me. Good night. I'm doing well. You?
I'm all right. Well, just here I have some touching questions to ask you. I mean, a lot of people really wanted this interview for a long while. They really have some questions to really get across that they really want some answers to.
Mhm.
But first and foremost, if you don't mind, you can bless up our viewers and tell them a bit about yourself.
Well, I don't know. I think everybody would recognize me as the president of Issa and the principal of St. Elizabeth Technical High School. Um, I'm also, well, obviously, I'm a teacher by profession. I've been teaching all my life. Started teaching when I was a teenager out of high school. I'm actually a Monroe old boy. Um, I have my area of specialization is mathematics and computer science, not really sports, but but I love sports. Sports has always been a passion of mine ever since I can remember myself. So I was one of those country boy who grew up and went to the ball ground and spent all day until night came playing cricket, playing football. Um, I played well, don't know, played football and cricket up to college level. I I've also done some coaching. I'm a certified West Indies Cricket Board junior
Wow.
cricket coach, and I would have dabbled in football and cricket at the younger age groups level. So I love sports is actually my greatest passion. But never had enough ability to make money from it, so I decided to stick with maths and computer science.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Um, and of course, I think my in terms of my greatest love is my family. So I have a son who obviously I came from a big family, a lot of brothers and sisters, but I have only one child, which all gets all the love.
All right. So let's just delve into the business now. So first and foremost, what has your tenure as head of ISA been like so far?
Um, Interesting, rocky. I think that I think I've really been tested, and the executive which I lead would have been really been tested. We initially were elected in 2019. Yes, 2019, right? So we have actually served one full term of 2 years. We got re-elected. Everybody got re-elected in 20 last year. So we actually had to serve an extra year because of the pandemic, and then we got re-elected last year for another 2 year term. It has been really testing. We when we came in, our first competition was the 2019 schoolboy football season, and I don't know if you can recall, but I think in terms of weather, it was probably most difficult schoolboy football season. We had a lot of lightning, a lot of rain, um, flooding, and all of that. So we actually had to move games to 1 o'clock and had to play some games at 10. We had to be moving around games just because of the weather. So it was really, really challenging. And then our next major competition would have been champs, which got cancelled 1 week before the start of champs. So that, and then because of COVID. So I think we would have encountered quite a few challenges. But I think the positive for us is that I think by all accounts, we would have done reasonably well through the pandemic in providing the opportunities for our kids to participate in sports. And so, we really feel proud that as a body, we were not the ones who prevented our kids from playing. And we, as a matter of fact, I can say that we did everything. And I think we were fairly successful in getting our student athletes to participate in sports relatively quickly after the pandemic brought everything to a close. So I think that would really be the mark of our administration over the last um, 3 to 4 years that we've been in, 3 years that we've been in the leadership at ISA.
Okay, fair enough. And my next question to you would be that Are there any particular plans for additional sports to be added to the school curriculum? And then I'm going to also have a follow-up question in regards to that as well. So the follow-up question will be, what was the sponsorship like from corporate Jamaica in regards to supporting the school sports program?
All right. In answer to your first question, so we have, I think we run about 20 odd competitions at Issa, covering what, football, netball, basketball, swimming, girls football, volleyball, table tennis, hockey, cricket, whatever I left out. I think those are the competitions that we run directly. There are a few sports that are played in schools that we don't control. For example, lacrosse, um, tackle football, rugby. Those sport, badminton. Those sports are, we actually have our high schools competing on a small scale with those sports, but they are not directly run by Issa. What we do from time to time is that if there's enough interest from enough schools, then usually we will organize the competitions, sometimes directly and then sometimes on behalf of the national associations. So we are always looking if there are other sports that our students are gravitating to. And once that is the case, then we help to organize these competitions. So I think and the next question, the other
Yes,
part
in
was in
regards to
terms of,
the
right,
sponsorship.
so,
How was the
right. So in
sponsorship
terms
been
of
like?
sponsorship, obviously the two that get the bulk of the sponsorship is really football and athletics. So most of our money, I would say 95% of our sponsorship dollar comes from those two sports. We get something for cricket, we get something for table tennis. Um, right now, there's no other sport that is sponsored. I think, yeah. So it's really football, girls football, boys football, cricket to a lesser extent, track and field, and table tennis. Those are the sports that we get in sponsorship for.
Okay, and we know that we just have the recently concluded schoolboy football season. Now we'll take that into consideration. What was the fan support like, and even the sponsorship itself? Was it well supported right across the island, or there was iffy support in and around certain areas?
I think the support in terms from, well, first of all, from a sponsorship level, I think we got good support from our sponsors in terms of financial backing. We have to understand that, corporate Jamaica was affected by COVID as well, and therefore they would have had challenges in terms of finding enough financial support to go around for everybody. But we are pleased with the support that we got because we are understanding of their situation. And apart from this year itself, they actually came back with us when we came back in 2021, right? With the pandemic still on, we were fortunate enough to still have the support of our sponsors. Granted at a reduced amount, but again, you have to take into consideration context. This fan support, I think, came back, was good, and fans want to see a good product, and I think the schools that were doing well continue to get support. Yeah, I think we got good support, and I have to commend the spectators as well because again, you pay to go to these games, and we know what the economic situation is like in Jamaica. So not everybody has the type of disposable income that will allow them to spend on everything that they would like to spend on. But we are pleased with the support that we have been getting.
Okay, fair enough. And in terms of the overall season, I know that there's going to be the All Manning and Augusta Cup game on, I think it's this weekend. But in
Saturday.
terms of the entire competition, the schoolboy season, would you consider it as a success?
I think in terms of our objectives, yes, I think it was a success. And I'm going to say that in terms of one of the major factors for us in terms of putting on sporting competitions at ISA is to allow for students to get the opportunity to socialize. So separate and apart from opportunity to play and to develop their talents and to showcase their talents, we also believe that it is important. Sport is an important socialization tool. And for us, for example, when you look back at the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and you look at the number of red cards that were issued, you look at the number of fights where there was an incident with 2 players and you end up with 5, 6, 7 players involved. Right?
I
No,
know
that
that's
is an indication of actually what we were facing as schools in our classrooms, in our school setting during the regular school hours, because a lot of our students came out of the pandemic not knowing how to resolve conflict, not knowing how to relate to each other. So we found that at the start of the football competition, and we were able to, based on our actions and how we reacted to it, we found out that by the time we get to the latter part of the first round, very few red cards were being issued, and particular for things like that, for fighting and so on. So we regard that as one success. Then we look at the obviously the opportunity that we provided. We think that was that was good as well. I think from a technical point of view, I don't necessarily think the quality of the football was necessarily where we would want to see it, or where in terms of a trajectory where we expect it to be at this time. But you have to consider that a lot of these players were playing at age 17 or 16 or 18 in their Manning or Dakar Cup team. A lot of these players missed out on 3 years of football between age 13 and 16 or 14 and 17. A lot of them did not get to play football at that age, so their development would have been affected. And I think what you are likely to see next year is real quality, because number of them will be coming back and getting now into their second and third seasons of Manning and the Costa Cup. So we think that is a process, and we are happy with what we would have seen.
okay. And my next question to you would be: there are a lot of concerns from the public about too many of the latter games being held at states. How do you respond to the public in regards to that? And was it something planned by Issa, or it just happened that it came up during the time that one? I know that in terms of overall as a complex, we'd say that it was one of the best in terms of lighting and stuff like those. But how do you respond to the public querying about that?
All right, so this is something that has been a regular concern expressed by the public, especially I would say since 2009, when States became a dominant schoolboy football team. So a lot of persons started to complain about States playing a lot of games at home. This year it wasn't so much about States playing a lot of games at home, but a lot of games being played at States. So just for information purposes, we do a schedule as early as it's completed by mid-August and made public by mid-August. So everybody knows what the schedule is like. We have a particular structure in terms of how games are scheduled and venues. So in the Dakar Cup, obviously the first round games are played home and away, right? And then for the second round, which is the seeded round, you play one game at home and one game away, right? The major difference between the first round and the rounds after is that Issa is insistent that the games be played on surfaces at venues that are of a particular standard. Meaning, one, Issa can actually collect money at the gates, because those games now become Issa games, and it is a source of revenue for Issa to allow for us to get funding to help with the competition. That competition along with other competitions. Two, security in terms of player welfare, spectators, and so on. The quality of the playing surface and the amenities to allow for spectators. So when we get to the second round, that is the seeded round, every single school can host their games, right? Once they are able to meet that criteria. There are some schools that unfortunately they don't have the facility to host their games. So the same thing would apply in the Manning Cup. But when you look at the Manning Cup, there are probably only about 3 or 4 school fields that could accommodate that. So because of that, we end up in the Manning Cup, for example, having to have schools playing their 2 games, home and away, either at Stadium East, Jamaica College, George's, Calabar, Prison Oval, because there just aren't enough fields in Kingston. In the rural area, there are a few more schools with fields. So schools like Dintale, States, Manchester High, Glenmuir, Garvey Massey, Fogar Road. These schools that have better fields, they get to play their home games at their schools, right? But then there are the option now, if they don't have a good school field, the venue that is closest to them of a good quality that meets the criteria, they are allowed to play. The problem that people have with states is that states keep getting to play their games at states. And the only reason that happens is because states actually continue to win. So if states don't win, then states don't get to play their games at states. Or, for example, if states, let us take, for example, the round after the seeded round, where there are 3 games. The policy at Issa is that for those 3 games, the team that wins their group, right, or that is seeded higher, they get 2 home games and 1 away. So if states come second, we're going to get 1 home game and 2 away. If we win, we get 2 home game and 1 away. And then now it appears that why all states get so much home game, but it is the same thing for everybody, with the exception that some of the teams that actually win, they don't have a school venue that can facilitate the game. But if states wins, they're going to get it there. If Manchester win, they're going to get it there. If Dintil win, well, Dintil had a problem this year with fencing and so on. But all of these schools, if they win, they can get the games at the school, right? So that is, I think that is where the issue comes up with states playing at states. Then the other issue of states hosting other games outside of games that states are involved in. So, for example, semifinals that states not playing in, or quarterfinals. Let me tell you something, Levan. It is actually a business, right, for Issa. And therefore, Issa wants to ensure that they are going to maximize what they can make at the gate. And if they have a venue that comes at a cheaper cost and a venue that has the necessary facilities that can accommodate the games of a particular magnitude, they are going to host it at those venues, right? This year we had an issue with venues for the semifinals and finals. And if you look back at the fixtures, you'll notice that even in the urban area, in the Manning Cup for the Champions Cup, we had to be changing dates for games because we just couldn't get Sabina Park for the dates we want them. We couldn't get Stadium for the dates we want them. Mobile, we could have gotten Catherine Hall for the dates we have. But then now the problem we had, or what was decided, not just by Issa as in the principals, but we actually have a committee, a football committee that includes coaches in the Manning Cup, coaches in the DaCosta Cup. What was decided in August was that the semifinals and finals, the designated venue for the DaCosta Cup, would be Catherine Hall and or states. That was decided by the committee, including coaches, in August, right? The contention was that Catherine Hall would be first choice, but if there were no Western teams in the competition, it would make no sense to go to Catherine Hall. That was what was decided by the committee in August, right? And was shared with all the coaches across the competition in August, right? So when it came down to the finals, that was the scenario, the situation we found ourselves in. We still considered going to Catherine Hall, but when everything was taken into consideration, it was felt that the best option was to have the game at states, or the games, because I think the semifinals and the finals as well. Again, what a lot of persons don't understand, when we go to a game, when Issa hosts a game at the stadium or Catherine Hall or Sabina Park, it literally cost us much more than $1 million, right? Much more than $1 million, and you can do the maths. If we charge $1,000, if we charge $1,000 for a seat, right, and you work it out, most times the average crowd outside of a big finals or semifinals, we don't get 2,500 persons at a gate. So a lot of times I can tell you it is the DaCosta Cup money, especially money earned at states, Manchester High, Landilo, Rossies. This is the money that pays for a lot of these games, including games that we keep at Sabina Park, because you don't make the money.
I'm glad you went there now, because my next question is in regards to some monetary aspects. So look at the student athletes. Let's say, for example, the Manning Cup champion, the DaCosta Cup champion, and all those other competitions, including the Ben Francis and the Walker Cup, and even across over the track and field, those top athletes. Is it something in the pipeline that you guys should incentivize these athletes?
Not the athletes, the schools.
The athlete themselves.
No, because they are not professionals. I don't think we'll get to the stage, at least not anytime soon, where students are actually paid to play or given monetary incentives. They get other incentives, but it is. I don't see it happening where high school students are going to be given cash. Let us put it that way. Well, certainly not by the organizers to participate or to win. We do spend, I can tell you that at the end of the year, each year, it's a in terms of raw money that goes back to the schools. We're not counting gear or anything else that we buy and give to the school, just cash. We give back schools approximately $40 million each year.
Whoa.
Right? So between prize money and what we call reflows. So for example, at champs, for every point that the school scores, there's a specific amount of money that you earn for each point, but it goes directly to the school. Right? For football, there's prize money for the winning teams, plus we give a cash what we call subsidy at the start of the season to help with preparation. We give cash prize monies at the end. These are all cash, and then if you add, I can tell you much more than that we pay, for example, for gear, for whether it's football or cricket or what have you. But we're not going to be handing out cash to student athletes.
All right, fair. All right, the other question that I have to ask in regards to schoolboy football. Now, on a yearly basis, you know that we get these teams that easily get dropped.
Mm-hmm.
Get teams where Jamaica College beat them up by 14-0, 15, and all of those stuff. Mm-hmm. Is it something that Issa should take into consideration, like a tier sort of system in terms of these teams that their program is not up to standard as yet? Have them in a tier by themselves, let them play amongst each other, and then you'd have like a playoff. And when you have the playoff now, you'd have a promotion and a demotion on all stages. So is it something that you guys will take into consideration?
All right, let me tell you, before I answer that directly, let me tell you what, it's a discussion that we have had. Right, we have had that discussion, and let me tell you what the concerns have been, right? Let us say the rules remain the way they are now, right? Just for argument's sake, all the rules that are in place remain the way they are now. You recognize that states could possibly have no team at all this year, right? No team at all. And so we have to play Division 2. But we go out and get 5 Trinidadians and 3 St. Vincentians and 2 from JC and 1 from KC, and all of a sudden we have a team. Not true? Right? Because it is, and even without stretching it, not likely, but we could turn up next year and find some boys in the school that are really good, because these are school teams. So one of the concerns that has been expressed in these discussions in the past is that because they are school teams, obviously you can actually have a brilliant team this year as a school as well, and next year you don't have anybody at all. So you could actually win the Dakar Cup. I remember States winning the Dakar Cup in 1999, and in 2000, 2001, we did not leave our preliminary round group, because that is the nature of schoolboy football. So that is the concern we've had. The other concern that we have had is that schools and sponsorship arrangements for lower tiered competition is difficult. So, for example, as much money as we get for Manning and Dakar Cup, we're not finding it for under 14 or under 16. We actually tried that system in cricket, where we had a Grey Shield and a Tier 2 cricket competition, and again, was difficult to market. So those are the 2 major concerns we have. On the other side, though, we are concerned about what you mentioned in terms of the inequity between how schools spend on their teams and the resources available to them and the quality of their teams. We are concerned about that. We are also concerned that as more and more schools, the format we have, or the structure of our competitions now, would have been in place years ago, starting from when we had 30 high schools, 50 high schools, 60 high schools. Now we have 175 high schools that are members of Issa. So the Dakar Cup right now, we'll have 85 teams last year without some teams participating. So potentially you could end up one year where you have 100 schools want to play Dakar Cup. We believe that it would be very untenable to organize a competition with 100 Dakar Cup schools or 50 Manning Cup schools. And in addition to that, it is difficult now because of some of the issues we have. So we are always reviewing to see what our best options are in terms of determining how to ensure that there is equity with our competitions.
Okay, fair enough. And hopefully one day my school will get there. I mean, they have a decent size field, just that it needs some little renovation, and then
Which
they'll be
school
good.
at? Which school is that?
Ferncourt.
Ferncourt. Yeah, but Ferncourt never played football for about 15 years.
Yeah, I know, man.
Well, they haven't played. They
It's
just
been
played
it's
under
it's been
16. This is the
it's been a
first time.
while. Ferncourt has joined any schoolboy competition, really.
Yeah.
Oh man, as I always say, well, I don't want to get into it, but I said that one of the previous principal, he wasn't a fan of sports, so let's just leave that there. All right. We're going to segue into track and field now.
Mhm.
Look at last year hosting of champs. One of the key pointer from champs last year was the moving of the 100-meter finals from Fridays, in which every single Jamaican look forward to that on a Friday evening after work. Nothing beat that vibe. But now it has been moved to Wednesday. Based on what you guys did last year in terms of the scheduling, how good was it? Or how good was the support in regards to it last year?
All right. So last year, we actually have had this discussion already this season. And one of the things that we have said is that it's difficult to gauge um, how successful or how much of a failure it was. Simply because it wasn't a normal year. If you remember, all the plans for champs up until the end of January basically was about limited spectators having to be vaccinated, and so on. So by the time we got around to, and by that time we would have actually had almost all our plans in place. When we got to March, what we found out is that quite a few of our traditional spectators did not come to champs last year, right? Some persons were still cagey about the risk involved, especially our more mature spectators, who are the ones who have their specific seats in the grandstand, who book the tickets from abroad and come in. Some steal a day off work on Friday, so they land Thursday evening and come in for the weekend of champs and come back out Sunday. All of that was hard. We never had everybody there, and it was difficult to gauge. So so we understand that there were issues, and I think we're basically taking a decision that we're going to go with it as is this year, and we're going to see how it works under more normal circumstances, and we'll review again. I think there were some things that we didn't do as well as we should have done. So for example, the Friday evening, when you look at it, I think we had the final, which one of the finals? I think we had some finals early and then ended with semifinals, when really it should have been the other way around, where you have the semifinals early and the finals in the evenings, in the finishing off the evening. But as it relates to what the rationale behind the 100-meter, actually this again is something that the technical people wanted. So the coaches themselves, it is a recommendation that it didn't just come about this year, but coaches have been asking for it for a long time, to say, listen, it is unfair for us to have the 100, 200-meter double is the premier double in track and field. And when you have athletes running the 100 meters, I think the way it was, they were running the 100 meters starting on Wednesday. The 200 meters start on Tuesday. They run the 200 meters semifinals, I think, on Thursday or something like that, and then come back and run. So the 100 and the 200 were mixed up. And the coaches, the technical people, were the ones who said, let us get the athletes to run the 100 meters out of the way, because every sprinter, their dream is really to win the 100 meter. You don't want them running the 100 and the 200, get injured in the 200 and can't finish the 100, or vice versa. So can you, Issa, try and get them to do the 100 meters, get that out of the way, then concentrate on their relays and the 200 meters. We felt that last year was an opportune time to try it, because of the conditions that were in place for champs, in terms of not full stadium, and therefore give everybody a chance to see something by spreading out the finals right across the meet. So that was one of the major reasons why we tried it that way.
Okay, and as a big fan of sports overall, and especially champs, want to ensure that the starters are good this year. That was a key sticking point, and even at the senior trials and other meets, we saw the same issue. So we're asking as fans, please, starters be good this year around. So you can advise them in that regards.
I will pass on the message. And you do know that we use the best set of starters in the country, the ones who are most certified, even at the regional level. So the only better we can get is to get people from abroad. If there are ones who are abroad, better, who are better from abroad.
Okay. And my follow-up question to that as well, and I think it's Kim's in the comment section asking, what about the spectators? How important is what the spectators think into planning champs?
Very important because remember that champs is basically Issa's cash cow. And if you want to ensure that cash cow is fed, you have to ensure that the spectators are satisfied. And so it is a consideration. It's a significant consideration. So if the question relates to why the 100 was moved, we are fully aware that some spectators may not like it, others may like it as well. So, but we will, as I said, it's something that we will review. We are reviewing, and we will make our notes and make a decision that is in the best interest of the majority, including the athletes and the spectators, and it's an organization.
Okay. And don't you think that based on the emphasis that is being placed on football and track and field, in that regard, it's leaving the other sports behind because not enough attention, sponsorship, or such is being paid to those other sports? Don't you think so?
I wouldn't say that they are being left behind. I think that they are not getting all the opportunities that they deserve. For example, for me personally, I have been saying for the last year and a half that I think basketball, for example, has tremendous potential as a sport, as a Issa product. One for television because it's a fast-paced game. More and more Jamaicans are loving basketball. The way it is played, it is good for television. But we don't have a sponsor for basketball. But we are saying, well, right now I've made a commitment that we will not play another basketball season without a sponsor because we must find someone. Because we really think that basketball has significant potential for marketing. So we know that sponsor because the truth is, sponsors come on board not only because they want to see growth and development in a particular product. Every dollar that they spend comes from their marketing department, which has as their main objective the growth of the product that they sell. So when they give Issa $10 for a competition, what they are looking at is how many persons are going to be watching these games, how many potential consumer do I have access to by sponsoring this game? Because it's not really sponsoring, it's marketing. So these sponsors are really looking for a marketing opportunity and a marketing tool. And if football gives them the best bet to affect their bottom line, then football gonna get the money. But I think that there are other competitions. We look at, for example, girls football this year. You have a program where for the second consecutive World Cup, Jamaica will be participating. Then I think corporate Jamaica needs to understand the value of that and how much influence they can get from being a part of the development of our reggae girls, right? Netball is probably the top team sport in Jamaica, but we don't get any financial support for netball. Maybe it is because Issa is not doing something right. Because, for example, netball is played 10 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the day. Schools not letting out the children to go and watch netball when they should be in class. So who will the sponsor be promoting their product to?
True.
You understand? So we have our work to do as an organization as well as individual schools.
And even in regards to the basketball, as you just mentioned, I've seen multiple complaints that people are tired of GC Foster being the host of the finals now. They need to see somewhere else, man.
Yeah, but you need the facilities. You need
True.
to see the facilities around. But I think I can say as a president of Issa, I would love to see basketball grow significantly over the near future because the potential is definitely there.
Okay. I'm going to segue into a different discussion. So, the much maligned controversial is a 45% rule that seemed to find favor with most stakeholders.
Mm.
Are there any future plans to revisit this perhaps? Because if we're being honest, not every student will attain that standard. And I personally don't see why I would stop a child that might be challenged to learn theory but is good practically from doing what they ought to. So what say you?
All right. So putting on my education hat, right? And I think this is where the layman get lost or misguided, where Issa's rules are concerned, right? So first of all, Issa wants to ensure that every child gets the opportunity to participate in our competitions. That's the first thing. I think everybody needs to recognize that it is in our best interest as an organization to have our kids get the opportunity to participate, especially the ones that are most talented. If we want to market the product, then obviously the better players that are allowed to play, the more we are able to market the product, right? So if we establish that as a fact, then and if we also establish that Issa doesn't want to shoot itself in the foot, right? Then why is it that we would take a decision like this? First of all, we recognize that we have a responsibility to the student athlete as a whole, not just the athlete part of him. So we can't as principals be using our students to ensure that the product grows and we have good sponsors and all of that. We are of the opinion, professional opinion, that our student athletes are going to be better students, better athletes if they are also committed to their schoolwork, whether they are quote unquote bright or dunce or in between. We also know that there are times when our students, because they are young and they don't understand the value of education, they get carried away into in terms of the attractions and the everything that comes with the highlighting in the different things that they do. So you will see, for example, a youngster who can DJ, right, or who can sing. There are times when they get carried away and they tell you that they want to be an artist, right? And they spend hours and days focusing on the artist, and they don't understand that for every cartel or every Movado, there are 100 persons who tried to be cartel or Movado and did not succeed, and therefore had to find some way other way. Similarly with sports, it's the same thing. But specifically now, as it relates to the grades and why we think it is fair for us to have an average, and in this case 45 attached to participation, how school is supposed to run, and I am speaking now as a principal and as a teacher, right, is that every single child should get the opportunity to perform or to improve on wherever they are. So if I hear people saying that boy Pitney go to high school and can't read, so how them all get 45? But that is the exact point that Issa wants to make. If you get a child who cannot read in grade 7, right, rather than say let him play and whatever grade him get, him should play. What we are saying is that if that child come to you in grade 7 from primary school and cannot identify the letters of the alphabet, then although it is a high school where they should be doing compound sentence and conjunctions and whatever, comprehension or whatever, you need to start teaching that child to read. And if you are able to get that child to start identifying letters, to be able to read, to sound vowels, whatever you call it, right? And that child is able to attain 45% at that level, that child is eligible to play. If you get a child who came to you with 100% at GSAT and is able to manage the regular high school curriculum, that child only needs to get 45. Right? So it is not a standardized test that we give to a particular child to say everybody must get 45 years or else you can't play. So the responsibility really lies with the individual schools to ensure that there's a program in place where every single child is able to attain at least 45% of what you're asking them to do.
Okay. And my follow up to that would be, what is the case where this particular athlete, this year they might be at a 10 Next year, see them at a 20. Following year at a 30, but they're stuck at the 30, 40 mark thereabouts. Don't attain the 45. They give an opportunity to this kid to participate in Issa run competitions.
First of all, it would mean that the school is failing. So the school needs to look at itself and determine what it's doing wrong. So before we even get to the child, right, you need to question the process, right? Because I think both of us will agree that if a child is in school and can't pass 30%, can't get past 40%, it means that the child is failing and the school is not succeeding at its mandate of improving the child. And I know somebody's going to say, boy, Mr. Wellington, that's not true, and it's not fair because some people can't learn. If the child may not be able to learn X plus Y, right? But the child can, if for example, we have had cases now where we test a child and the thing come back and say, boy, the child is in the bottom 1% of the population in terms of academic ability. That's a different case. You can always take that to Issa to say that, boy, this child have a learning difficulty and therefore we're asking for an exemption. Issa will consider it. But it can't be just because the child not getting 45.
All right, so what about schools where high schools that have slow learners? How do you go about these athletes?
But I go back to the same, I go back to to my explanation earlier. All right, so we know, right, that in Jamaica there are schools where if you don't average 90, you can't get in. Right? We know that there are schools where you have to average over 70. There are schools where everybody who gets in the school averaging less than 30. Right? We know that there are schools where everybody in the school average less than 30. Not true? But the difference between what Issa is asking and what those grades reflect is that those 30% or 90% is on a standardized test where every single student, Levon, so you having a challenge?
Yeah, man, flow on them slow internet.
Oh, but you're hearing me still, right?
Yeah, man, good, man.
Right. So when a child gets into high school, a child gets in on a standardized test where everybody does the same thing. But if you end up in, as you put it, a slow school, right? Or a school with slow learners, it is the onus is on that school to modify its curriculum to allow for students to, first of all, start where they are at. So if they come in at 35%, it may mean that they're at a grade 4 level. So although they're coming into high school at grade 7, right? You can't then now take up the same curriculum that the student is doing at school Y, where everybody get 90%. You need to probably look at a grade 5 curriculum and get the students up to 45.
All right, so the question that I have to follow up with that as well. What about schools similar to like School of Hope?
School of Hope?
Yes, like.
Well, remember, those schools are not regular secondary schools, you know, so those schools would not be part of Issa's.
Oh, but what if they want to enter Issa run competitions?
They are not allowed to.
Oh, fair enough. And now I'm going to place you as a principal, no longer the Issa president. We've always heard about schools turning back kids because of grooming, including haircuts and all of those stuff. Are you one of those principals that is hell-bent on this? Do you turn back kids because of haircuts and stuff like those? Because personally, I don't think that haircut has nothing to do with how you learn.
All right. So again, so hell-bent on doing, I wouldn't use that term, but we have rules. We have rules that speak to grooming, and we expect all our students to abide by those rules. The rules include the way you should dress, and how you should groom yourself. It is a principle that as schools we are bounded by in terms of trying to get students to understand that as an adult, because we are preparing you for adulthood, you know, as an adult, there are going to be, most times you will have to make a choice between your personal preferences and what the condition or the circumstances you find yourself in dictate, right? So I say to my thing to my students is that, listen, most of us don't like rules, right? Most of us would prefer to do our own thing. And every single rule, including the 10 in the Bible, and I'm not being overly religious because I'm not being overly religious, but every single rule, the ones in the Bible, the one on the government's book, those rules came into place because there are some natural tendencies that individuals have that if every individual was allowed to do their natural tendencies, it will create anarchy. So, for example, we build a highway that the road is good. You build cars that go at 200 kilometers per hour, but there are speed limits for 110 kilometers. Why should you have a speed limit of 110 kilometers on a highway where the road is good and the car is in good condition? Why shouldn't I be allowed to drive at 200 and you allowed to drive at 80 if you can only go at 80? Simple. If everybody's allowed to do what they want to do, it will create anarchy on the road. Similarly with the Bible, God make us all with urges as men. But the Bible tell you, say, boy, you must only have one woman. And he make we with urge. Right? But in more, we're going to feel that way. So he make guidelines. So it's a similar thing with schools. When you leave school, your choices are wider, right? You have more choices that you can make on your own. But as a student, as a young adult, as somebody you are grooming and shaping their mind, it is important that rules are put in place just for the sake of being a rule. Because that is how you get persons to be disciplined and to avoid doing things that they may want to do, but appreciating that it is not in the best interest of the group. So there are rules at schools that are only there to ensure that students understand that rules are made to be followed.
Oh, so basically you're saying that some of these rules don't make any sense. They're just there for them to follow.
Every one of them makes sense. Every one of them makes sense. But every one of them makes sense, but it depends on the context, right? So I have issues from time to time because I will see a boy with a haircut that I don't see a problem with, and another teacher or somebody say, boy, enough have a hair. Oh. Right? My son, me tell him sometimes, I have to tell him, say, boy, me not pay the barber today. And if you want to pay the barber, you want to go to barber every week, and all you're going is just to shave the side of your hair. You pay the money this time. Because me not go to barber just so the barber take off 2 inches side here, so.
Well, reason why I ask the question still is because we're moving into a modernized society. So Jamaica love to adapt foreign principles.
Modern don't necessarily mean better, you know.
Well, that's true.
Modern don't necessarily mean better. It's a matter of fact, the more modern we have become, the more issues we have created with living with each other.
True.
So just to say that we are becoming more modern as if that is all good. And it is on the converse too. It is true that some of the things that the people used to do in the past is worse than what is happening, because the tall hair is not anything new.
That's the whole point. This is something from back in the days, and so I don't see the big deal about it.
But it goes back to what I said earlier. It is just that rules in schools. So I'm not talking about you and your here or the man down the street and him and him here, you know. But in schools, right, the main objective of rules is to ensure that young people understand the concept of discipline and sacrifice and team good. That is what school is about. Individualism is not necessarily the best thing. Just like our democracy is not all good. You understand?
Yes. But my closing question to you is that we've known about this is a president for a long while, talking about none other than Mr. George Forbes himself. Mm-hmm. Are there any plans in place to honor the former president?
Well, at this point, it will be honoring his memory.
Yes. So, is there any plans in regards to that, like naming a competition after him, a trophy, or anything in that regards?
Well, I can't say no what the thinking is, but it is a discussion that has started.
Okay, glad to hear that. Mm-hmm. Any final words from you now, Mr. President?
Outside of thanking you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak. I hope that the conversation was of value. Just to remind everybody that the All Manning All Costa is on Saturday, and we are looking for your full support to close off the season. It is an opportunity to probably see some of our favorite schoolboy footballers for the last time as a schoolboy. And certainly, I think the concept of the all manning, all that cost is something that a lot of persons have always looked forward to. We haven't had it in a while, and we wanted to become a calendar item, meaning we have it every single year going forward. So encouraging everybody to come out and support the kids on Saturday.
I can give them the location where it will be.
All right, so it will be at the National Stadium. The game starts at 6 o'clock, but we actually have an awards ceremony at 4 o'clock, where the official presentations of all the trophies won by the teams as well as individual prizes will be handed out, including the MVPs for the different competitions, the golden boots, and all of the other individual and sectional prizes that we normally handed out. So all of that will be done at 4 o'clock, and then we move right into the game at 6.
Okay. And unlike last year, definitely I will be at this year champs. I mean, even though I've lost one of my top athletes to Idle, but we move on. Abigail can no longer friend code. No
Abigail.
Idle, so.
Abigail.
Yep, just life though. We'll move on.
Yeah.
But it was a pleasure having you here, Mr. Wellington. It cleared up a lot of issues that we had, man. So thanks for coming here. I mean, not often people like you tend to come on platforms and really tend to explain certain things that people in general might have questions to. But thanks for the opportunity, man. And it's a pleasure. And it was great to have you here and lots of insights. Hopefully, this won't be your last time around. And we'll have you here back soon once again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Blessings, man.
All right, good.
All right, to the people in the comment section, big up on yourself, man. Thanks for the great support throughout. Remember, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Keep it going. Until next time, peace out. Enjoy the rest of your evening.